Welcome to Describing the Skybox, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermans.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy, the Dawn of Souls edition, technically, which was developed by Square Enix, published by Nintendo, and released in 2004 on the Game Boy Advance, and then also later on the Wii U Virtual Console.
But first, if you give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated. Chad, can you describe Final Fantasy I, Dawn of Souls?
I can. Also, if you were curious, I just looked it up, and the original Final Fantasy I came out in 1987.
I did make a note of that.
That's an insanely long time ago. Yeah, well, we'll talk about it probably immediately. So Final Fantasy, I did a little bit of research on this, not nearly enough for me to say anything with necessarily a lot of confidence. But Final Fantasy was one of the earliest JRPGs, and definitely one of the more prominent ones, though notably was not released in the United States upon its initial release. It was an import much later. So yeah, that's partially why we're talking about the Dawn of Souls edition. The other reason is that Andy played it and liked it when he was a kid.
Yep.
Which is my favorite criteria for things.
Yeah, like 7th or 8th grade. Mm-hmm. Probably 8th, given that it was 2004.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't know, like the Game Boy Advance, well, okay, I'll talk about right now what I think the big difference is, because to my understanding, with the exception of changing some names, because there was no longer like a text limit on how long stuff could be, so you're not casting like Bull Null 1
right.
like some awkwardly named spell. You can actually cast spells with full titles, which is nice, as well as like certain items and stuff having their names changed. But the thing that stands out to me the most is the pixel art in the Game Boy Advance version of this game is genuinely some of the best that I've ever seen in my life. Potentially, like, meaning for the era, I guess. Like, on the Game Boy Advance, there's a lot of games with good pixel art, but I love... And it's funny because to me, I think it's a direct product of it being a remake of an NES game. Mm-hmm. They were able to up the detail, but there were already these design elements in play. So when you run into, like, big enemies that have this like gorgeous detail, like it works as an update to the NES version of the game, but it also just feels so like decadent. This is like the devil's food cake of pixel art upgrades.
Yeah. Like I know what you're getting at. It is kind of hard to describe, I think. Yeah, like there is like some kind of quality that this game inherits because it's a remake of an NES game and they're like reinterpreting stuff. Because yeah, like I really like the different backgrounds, and this is like nothing original. Plenty of other turn-based RPGs do this, but like if you're walking, across the overworld and you get to a forest, and then the backdrop of the battle is a forest. And then if you're in a big open field, then it's a field, et cetera, and so forth. It matches. And there's just something about that, like, pure, like, older RPG, like, abstraction that just kind of, like, there's just, like, a real charm to it.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that's the way to put it, is that there's, like, it keeps a lot of the same design. Like there are areas in the overworld when you're walking around, because it's all very abstracted. Your characters are like, if you took the overworld as an actual map, your characters would be like 40 feet tall, stomping around through forests and stuff. But because they have like these drawn trees, and if you're in like a marshy area, it's like a lighter blue-green color on the ground. And that changes like what enemies you can find and the battle backgrounds and stuff like that. And then just on top of that, all of the good sprite work with the characters and the enemies and the bosses. I think just everything just looks really colorful and really like fun and cool. And is one of my favorite elements about this. This is my second time through the game. You've played it multiple times, from my understanding. And it's something that just really stood out to me in both playthroughs. Part of the reasons that I was like, yeah, let's talk about this, right? Like, it's like, I do want to just look at, because it's a thing that we talked about, like, even if you go back to like the Final Fantasy X episode, we talk about how Square Enix has like a visual style and how that has evolved over time. And I like that you can see it even in a game that has what are technically very simplistic graphics. They still go above and beyond to make it artistically very complete. It's a very good looking style.
Yeah, and you can even see like their lust for storytelling this early on, because like you even get like the beginning, it is like has the section where you have to go fight Garland and come back to save the princess, and then like the king orders the bridge to be rebuilt, and they have like the little cutscene of all the soldiers building the bridge. And then you go across it, and then it triggers like this opening crawl, this nice like concept art shot of your characters like looking back at the castle after they've crossed the bridge, and you're like, hell yeah, I'm ready for a
the
fucking adventure.
Yeah, so true. And like, and it's funny because like when I play this game in 2026, I do imagine, you know, is this story riveting to me on a base level? No. But in context, like, this is a story from 1987 in an NES game where including text is a thing that was actually not trivial to do. And there were very few other games at the time that attempted to tell something similar to this in terms of like some sprawling saga. Like, you had games like Dragon Quest, obviously, but I think those are contemporaries for a reason. They were definitely working toward the same kind of goals. So it's interesting to see how it began.
Yeah, in the original game, there's a little Dragon Quest Easter egg in Elfheim. If you like read the tombstones, one of them says, "Here lies Erdrick," and then in this remake, it says, "Here lies Link," because it was published by Nintendo.
Right. Yeah, I forgot who it was. For some reason in my head, I thought that the tombstone. Okay, this is the thing. When I played it the first time, which was like early in 2025, so it was like a little over a year ago when I played this the first time, I did think that when I thought about it now, I was like, did it say like "Rest in peace, Mario" or something? Which would have been very funny, but it is Link, which is more appropriate, I think. No, and I think that leads one of the most interesting things about this, because I'll be up front. I have like an appreciation for this game. The fact that I finished it a second time should drive that point home. There are things about this game that I find really interesting, and I find playing it now to not be like an enormous hassle or anything, but like, this isn't going to be my favorite game that we talk about this year. I think is pretty clear based on what it is. But one of the things that I appreciate about it, one of the things that I find it really interesting is, as somebody who didn't play a lot of RPGs growing up, seeing how the genre started is a fascinating thing, because like it's a thing where the design language is so baked in to the genre at this point that I can like pick out the decisions being made as they're playing on screen for me. And I think a big one for me is just like the way that this game handles random encounters and combat makes so much sense when you look at it, but is the thing that I think now rubs me most abrasively of all of the other design decisions. It's just a very constant element of the game.
Yeah, and it did have me feeling like I wish there was like a equivalent of the repel from Pokemon at times.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one dungeon, I don't remember which one it was. I like was exploring the layout and I went to like a far edge of the wall, and apparently they cranked up the encounter rate in that one little hallway because like you couldn't go like 3 steps without encountering something, and it was like the most annoying shit ever. Um but yeah,
Every time.
yeah, that bass line, do. But yeah, no, I have like a note similar to that as well. And we can come back to the random encounters and combat in a second, because I'm sure you have more to say about it. But like, I wrote down the note of like, playing this game makes the existence of airships in RPGs make a lot more sense. Not that it needed to, because they're just cool as a mode of transportation, but like this game, the part of the exploration is built around like upgrading your mode of transportation. Like you leave the town or the city at the beginning, and like the next town you get to, you get the ship, and then you break out of like the bounds of the little area that you're in and go to the wider ocean, and then you eventually get the canoe, and then you get the airship, and then you're just upgrading your means of traversal, and then things are gated that way. Like there's places you can only get to with the boat, with the docks, and then there's like the rivers that you can only traverse with the canoe, and then there's landlocked places you can only get to with the airship. So there's like a nice progression to exploration that way that just makes a lot of sense when you play this game. And like future, RPGs have just inherited that and don't have like the same, reason for including it.
Mm-hmm. They sort of borrow it on an aesthetic level or as like part of a tradition more than anything else. I do think like other games have used it in interesting ways, like, and I don't think that you're saying that they didn't use them in interesting ways, but like gating like fast travel behind an airship makes sense. Stuff like that I think works. But for me, I feel like I found that to be like really clever design, similar to how I felt about like Metroid games in the way that they gate progress as well. Not in the Metroidvania way, where even though you could draw that parallel, but just in how cleverly designed the levels are, where it doesn't scream in your face that you are being bound by stuff, but then it opens up more naturally by the way that everything is. You can see the hand of the designer more obviously once you get the airship, because it's like, here's a town that you need to go to, and you cannot park the airship anywhere near it. You have to go like way off somewhere else and then walk to it.
Yeah, and it's like there's one little patch of grass on the whole peninsula or whatever that you can land on.
So you get to sit there and watch the airship land and then take back off as you try and like get yourself in the pixel perfect area. So it does get awkward at some point, but I think generally it's pretty clever. The way that the canoe works, as it just being like, it's just walking, but different essentially, but you can kind of like walk over walls.
Yeah, I feel like the raft works like that in the original Zelda as well.
Yeah, so I really do like that stuff, and it gives, and you're right, it does tie into what we were talking about with that other stuff as well. It's interesting because that airship removing the random encounters, and there being different encounters tied to like if you are on a river or in the ocean, like what you're actually going to run into in terms of enemies and stuff. It is very connected, like that travel and everything. But I think that like it gets a little much for me, but it's so easy for me to transport my mind back to being a child and imagining the idea of like, I want to explore this area. It's not that I'm going somewhere. It's that I don't know where I'm going, but I know that like now I have this new avenue of travel. I can get to new places and go scope them out. And the airship, I think, it really taps into that like spirit of adventure that the game is trying to instill in you, because you can now scope out like, oh, there's a town there, and then you fly around and like try and find a place so you can actually go get to it. But yeah, I do want to talk about how pissy bad I think that the random encounter system is a little bit. I think specifically, just I understand its inclusion, generally speaking. The fact that like they needed a way to get the player into combat that isn't like, it was just the solution at the time was you walk around and sometimes you encounter enemies and then you fight the enemies.
It draws inspiration, like all early RPGs, from D&D, because you could think of it like a hex crawl. It's like you take so many steps and it's like, oh, roll the dice. Oh, you get attacked by 6 trolls, or
Yeah, my problem comes in the fact that like, well, one, my big problem, as we all saw coming, is it takes a long time. It makes doing anything take 1,000 years. And you won't believe me, but you'll just have to take my word for it. The first time that I played the game, I did not use any emulator shenanigans. This time when I played the game, I liberally used the fast forward feature so that I could mash through enemies. And I think that like, for me, the thing that it really opened my eyes to was that I think the biggest problem this game has from a mechanical standpoint is that there are too many brain dead fights, like fights that don't require any strategy at all and are just there and take time. And the game would be significantly better, I think, if the combat was a little bit more complicated. And I don't mean in a way that like it was gated by technology, because there are fights in the game that do feel complex. But there should just be way fewer total fights generally, because like my first time through, and this will be an interesting point of conversation that we could talk about. My party was a fighter, a rogue, a thief. I forget what the classes are called.
Yeah, thief.
Yeah, fighter, thief, white mage, and monk. And then this playthrough, it was 2 fighters, white mage, black mage. So I wanted to kind of go for a different vibe than I had before. And in this playthrough, when I was using fast forward a lot, which did influence my decision on what class I was going to take, I could literally go into most fights in the overworld by just holding down the A button, and everyone would just do a regular attack, and then the fight would be over, and then I would move on with my life.
Right.
And I don't know, it didn't like rub me the wrong way, because I knew already what the game was and I knew when it came out and I wasn't expecting anything different, but it did make it more obvious, because it was such like an intentional thing for me to like speed things up and kill them and then go to the next thing. And I was just like, wow, there could be like 70% fewer fights in this game and I would like it better.
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic growing pain. And well, I guess it even is still a problem sometimes in RPGs. Like, you can go like half the game just hitting things with regular attacks and winning. So yeah. No, yeah, this game definitely suffers from that. But yeah, you see them like trying to do stuff. Like, we briefly were talking about before we got on. There's the Marsh Cave is one of the early dungeons, and like it's like, oh, it's the one where things poison you, and like the status effects are like a way to like the thing you have to like react to, and you can't just mash the attack button. But then it feels like they kind of just dropped that idea, whereas like most things don't do status to you, or if they do, it's like paralyze, which just wears off. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's not fully taken advantage of. And every once in a while, you'll get like attacked by like an enemy that can just have like a one-hit kill, like glare move that'll just kill one of your party members or whatever out of nowhere. But yeah, so I agree. And my playthrough this time, my party was a warrior, thief, white mage, red mage, because that was the first party I ever did in when I played it the first time. But yeah, I've done a lot of experimenting. I think monk is probably my least favorite class of all of them. But
I have some thoughts on monk.
yeah, but yeah. And, I mean, like, I think the monk and the thief suffer from just being inferior to the warrior until you get the class upgrades, and then they have like their own greater utility. But so yeah, like the two warriors, white mage, black mage, might be like the best party composition to go with, arguably, I guess.
I guess that makes some sense. I didn't. At some point, I did look this up. I think the first time I played it, because it felt weird to me that they were giving me this choice. Because it felt very impactful, right? Like what classes you play is, and it is like in reality, it is very impactful. I think warrior, thief, monk are a little bit more interchangeable than the mages are. And I honestly think, based on this playthrough, that you probably could get away without a white mage, which I assumed was not a possibility, except for the chaos fight. Like, the final boss fight of the game feels like if you don't have a white mage, I don't know what you do.
You could forego white mage for red mage.
That's true. You could go with a red mage. As long as somebody has, like, the highest level heal spell, you should be fine.
Well, I think only the white mage or like the white wizard can use that spell.
Oh,
because like the red mage, if you're unaware,
I'm not really aware.
Okay, yeah, red mage can cast white and black magic and use melee weapons, but he's kind of like a jack of most trades, master of none. Because like he can't use the best melee weapons, he can't cast the highest level black or white spells. He gets like the tier right underneath of everything. So he's kind of like just like a support type character. Like if you need him to hit stuff with a sword, he can do that. If you need him to heal, he can do that. If you need him to blast a guy, he can do that. But he won't do any of those things quite as well as the other classes.
That's the special, yeah. Because the problem that I had with the white mage, appropriately, falls into the same problem that I have with like Yuna in FF10, where there will be rounds of combat where I'm like, she could just not exist for this round and it would be better because then she couldn't take damage. So it's like, if I'm not actively hurting, the white mage doesn't really have a way to do anything to enemmies, like offensively. You can get holy, but that's very late in the game. So I ended up kind of like, that's why I was thinking about it. Like, could I not take a white mage? Because then I feel like things could be more efficient and you could deal more damage or whatever. But I feel like the chaos fight just takes so long, and he can cast Kiraga on himself,
right,
to make it last even longer. And I feel like without white mage, you just like don't have the sustain for it. But who knows?
You could maybe roll with two red mages, which would be red wizards by that point, and they could balance curing the party. Yeah. I mean, in this run, most of my damage came from flare from the black mage or the black wizard, which is a thing I didn't have access to before. In my first run, most of my damage came from my monk doing like 37 attacks in a single turn. Right. Which is why I have a soft spot for monk. What does monk upgrade into?
Super monk. I don't know. Hold on.
Is it like martial artist or something?
That sounds like it would be right.
I remember like as a like 8th grader when the thief is upgraded into a ninja. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever because it was like unexpected to me.
That is true. It's the master is what the monk upgrades into. But But yeah, I have a soft spot for the monk because I like that it doesn't have it's a class that is better when it doesn't wear equipment. I've always found that to be really cool. I love that the game doesn't know that apparently and will try to equip things onto the monk all the time. And you have to be like, please don't do that. So yeah, I don't know. I remember from playing it that the monk ended up being kind of like my main damage dealer. And then I had like my ninja was just like using the Mamusame, the Uma Musume. What is it called?
Masamune.
The Masamune. And then Excalibur on the fighter. And they were just doing kind of okay damage. Then the monk would just like nuke somebody's ass.
Yeah. I might just be misremembering. I just like my memory is that I wasn't a huge fan of the monk, but like maybe he has a slow start.
He does have a very slow start, I'll say. But I think the fighter makes up for it by being by never taking any damage at all.
Right. And being like the only one who can use equipment for like the first half of the game.
Yeah. Great. Honestly, yeah, I would not know what to do without a fighter. So, but yeah, but I think it's such an interesting decision to put on the player right at the beginning. And a thing, and we literally just talked about like Silent Hill F, like, and well, not that recently, I guess, like half a year ago. And I remember complaining vehemently about games being like, please play me more than once. Meh. I have 7 endings. This game encourages you to play it multiple times by having like an actual sort of like experimentation that you can do. And I really liked that. And I found it to be a really interesting decision.
Agreed.
So, yeah. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you there.
No. I mean, I don't even remember what I was saying, really. But yeah, I think it's one of the reasons I played it so many times back in 2004, 2005. So yeah, you just always do a different party composition. It's like, what if I went with 4 red mages? Or, you know.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Is it like allows you to double
mage,
up.
White mage, black mage, white mage. Or, you know, you can try and do like challenge runs like that. Or just 4 warriors and see if you can do it.
I feel like 4 warriors, not only would you be able to do it, I don't even think it'd be that hard.
Maybe. Yeah.
I guess you would run out of like good weapons, but...
True. Yeah, you could just buy enough potions to just make it through.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's mostly how the game works. This is also part of the reason why I think White Mage has like doesn't have enough to do problem, because the way I mostly played was I would walk around and the White Mage would not heal anybody, and then whenever somebody got low in between battles, I would just spam potions on them. And that was kind of how I went through the game most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found it easier or like more efficient to heal with the White Mage and then just only ever like stock up on ethers, so that like you can just like keep using all of the White Mage's magic until it runs out, and then just, you know, take it all the way back up with just maybe 4 ethers. So it was like a pretty like efficient way to heal versus potions.
That is very efficient. It requires you to press the A button a lot fewer times. True. Yeah. So I do agree with that. I know I used him. It was weird because like even like because the ultimate White Mage spell, like the complement to Flare on the Black Mage, is True Life, which resurrects like a Phoenix down, but also puts them at max HP. Mm-hmm. And until I got that, I just had a bunch of Phoenix downs that I basically never used because I could still just use the life spell, the regular life spell. So it didn't even feel like that much of an upgrade. But then also there was an alternative to the White Mage's magic in the form of just an item that you can buy for like 1,500 gold or whatever.
Right. 1,500 gil.
Sorry, gil, my mistake.
Of course. So, I mean, we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, like indirectly, but one thing I really like about this game is like how I think like the scope and like the scale of it really incentivize like exploration, or like, I don't know, like make it feel good. 'Cause like it feels like this big world, but like there aren't really that many towns. But like there's something about how it's all balanced where like you get like the new mode of transportation and like you want to go around and explore the world, and like in the game doesn't like hold your hand and like obviously tell you where to go next, but like, you never feel like you're like, or rarely feel like you're driven to like a walkthrough. Like you're usually able to just figure it out by like exploring, and just kind of following that wanderlust. And I think that works because of how big the game is and how dense it is with content. Like it just feels really well designed and laid out in such a way that like exploration feels fun and rewarding.
I would agree. I think because part of it being like an NES game, and I think that like its target audience being people who had a lot more free time, or potentially, and I don't want to get into the societal woes of the day, more of an attention span, more of a commitment to like being able to sit with their entertainment for a longer period of time, which is just less common these days. It's a big game, and you can just wander around. I think that does force the player to be a little over leveled for the entire game. But I don't think that that's that significant of a problem. It just is like, it feels better to explore in this, with the exception of how common combat ends up being. It feels very natural to explore and look around. And there is a map in the GBA version of the game. I don't know if that was in the original NES version.
Probably not.
Yeah. But that also makes it a lot. I feel like in the Dawn of Souls version, I would agree with you completely. And I feel like in the NES version, I probably still agree with you, but like in a vastly different historical context.
Right.
I will say this time through, I did not spend a whole lot of time exploring. I spent a lot more in my first playthrough. I took that a lot slower than I did this time. This one was I blitzed through it a little bit more. But I did still feel like I maybe like took too much to combat. I don't know. Like, I felt like I was not challenged mechanically, or I felt like I was even less challenged than I was than the first time, like with the additional knowledge of having played through the game before.
Yeah, I mean, the game really isn't that hard. And like, I know one thing I ended up doing at the time when I played this back in junior high, which was rare for me to find little like exploits or things like this. But like I've just noticed in the Mirage Tower that my levels were going up really quick. And I was like, I wonder like how high I can pump up my level. And like was just able to like level to like 99 in not that much time. And then just did the end of the game and like the bonus dungeons at like max level. So like it is really easy to like even accidentally kind of like just be a little over leveled for things.
Yeah, they come pretty quick, and I think it's one of those things where like in this genre being so old, right, and this being such an early game in it, like we have developed tricks to sort of finesse the player's level in a way that feels more like a ramping challenge in like other games. But then you still run into this nowadays, but I actually kind of like a game that lets you get over leveled, because I feel like it's speaking more to the like true crunchy parts of the genre that make it unique. Because like if you have a game that's like an RPG, but like everyone pretty much goes through the game at the same like rate and gets to the same level by the time they finish, with like a very small margin of error. I mean, are you not just playing Mario at that point? in the sense that like there isn't a lot of variation between things, and there's not a lot of player choice, and there are not a lot of ways to sort of exploit the systems, which I feel like are inherent to RPGs. So I do think that it made this game skew a little bit to the easy side, and then it had to have like a classic old JRPG difficulty spike at the end of the game. But I don't know. It's a little interesting. And I don't know if you played these. I played them. I don't know where my emphasis went on that one, but my first time through, but not this time. But like the bonus dungeons that they added to the GBA version, I think that's kind of where they fit in as being a higher level challenge.
I did not do them this time, but like I remember them being pretty hard. I feel like I beat 2 of them. Like I feel like I could never beat the Tiamat one, like the Wind Crystal one. I feel like that one was like ludicrously long. Yeah, and it had like I think that was the one that has the boss fight with the train. Yeah. Like I don't think I ever beat that one. But I think I did the
classic
water
Final
one
Fantasy
and the fire one. Maybe I don't remember. But yeah. They're really weird and abstract.
And they feel like it's so strange. It feels like somebody like a ROM hack of Final Fantasy. Yeah, because it's such a totally different design style from the rest of the game that you've been playing. I found them all to be when I played it. I did beat them all. It took me a while, but I was playing with no time limit and just kind of like in my free time over the course of like literally months.
And you weren't 12,
and I wasn't 12. So I did get through all of them. The one that I thought they were all pretty cool. There's one that is like literally just like go to 4 corners of a room and fight some bosses, which is not.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, but the bosses were like a fun design. I think the bosses are the highlights of this game as far as the mechanical side goes. But I do want to call out specifically the one that just like takes place in a desert. That one could go fuck itself.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, I forget what it is. It's like one segment of one of them where you just like walk around in a desert that you cannot see where you're going, and then eventually you find a staircase, which is what you do in this game, is you find staircases. And that one was, I remember not enjoying very much. But the rest of them I did actually like. And they do slot in as like that. If you thought that you may have been over leveled for the game, like here's a thing that's an actual like mechanical challenge that you may or may not be looking for. And if you're not, that's cool. They're totally optional. But a weird artifact of this version of the game for sure. Oh, I did want to talk about... something that we brought up earlier, which is the way that this game handles status conditions. Status effects in this are fucking brutal in a really scary way. I had, like, at least when I was playing the first time, things like stone and paralysis were terrifying to me. And then poison is like the most brutal version of poison I've seen in any game ever, where it sticks on you like in Pokemon, like in the old Pokemon games where poison would tick as you walked around. And you have to have an antidote to cure it. You can't rest to cure it. Like resting just leaves you poisoned. Which means that early in the game, you will have to like grind up some money to just like carry a stock of antidotes, and suddenly it's not a problem. But if you're playing the game for the first time and don't know that, getting poisoned just like sets you back like 40 minutes of progress. And it can be really scary. And then, yeah, instant death, stone, paralysis, those can all just end fights in like a second without you really having much counterplay to them. So I found them to be pretty, I don't know. I feel like it didn't kill me that often, like maybe twice in my first playthrough and once in this one. So maybe it's like balanced exactly right to enhance the tension when you're fighting against enemies that can paralyze you, or do any of those other horrible, nasty things to you. But yeah, in the moment it feels really bad, but like in retrospect, maybe it's what the game needed to make combats with regular enemies a little bit more interesting.
Right. Yeah, I feel like this is kind of a quirk of older RPGs. Is just like that incentivizing you to like be prepared,
Mm-hmm.
to like go to the shop and actually look at the items and buy the things, and because yeah, like if you know to buy antidotes and you know to get gold needles and etc. and so forth to deal with the different status effects, like they really aren't that big a deal.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, they definitely like are the biggest hurdle on a first time playthrough. And I think kind of poison might be the most brutal one, and it's like right there at the beginning.
Yeah, what we were talking about before we started was specifically the Marsh Cave, which is, to my understanding, fairly infamous for being like a wall for new players in this game, which makes a lot of sense. On this playthrough, it was interesting to see like just my knowledge of it, going back through and knowing what I was expecting. It was such a cakewalk in comparison to how it normally is, but yeah, on my first playthrough, I was in and out of that dungeon like 5 times before I actually got through it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of running back through those mountains.
A lot of running back through the
to
mountains.
Elfheim. Yep, I definitely remember that from back in the day. Like, I was surprised how, I guess not really surprised because I know myself, but like I remember the beginning of this game so well. But then I was actually surprised that like I really just forgot a lot of the middle of the game. So that was nice to kind of get to re-experience that for the first time.
It was like my first playthrough I felt was very thorough in the sense that I imagine that your playthrough of it just this year was. And this time I got to the final area and I remember like being in the boss and having to scroll through my list of spells and seeing that there were like rows that were completely missing because there were towns I just like didn't go to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's such a vastly different experience when you have knowledge of it. Similar to like I guess to anything, but like obviously my head goes to like Dark Souls. My first playthrough was 60 hours. My most recent playthrough was 10 hours. It's a pretty big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were lots of spells I just didn't buy because I knew I probably wouldn't be using them.
And that's actually another thing that's interesting is that there are a lot of, you can carry 3 spells from like any level, like magic level. I don't know what they call it in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do actually have to make a decision to like not take certain things. There are things that you just cannot have, which I found cool as well. One of the things that I found funny in maybe a meta contextual kind of way, but the way dungeons are designed in this game. First of all, visually, I love the dungeons. I think they all look really cool. I like that they have different tile sets and things like spikes in the ice cavern or like the lava floor felt really novel to me as a non-old RPG player. I was like, wow, there's like strategy to this, like in a way that I wasn't expecting. Just like to walking around in a dungeon. The fire dungeon with all the lava I actually think is really cool. Ironically, I guess, because it's quite hot in there. Mm-hmm. But I also love the fact that because the way that the game whittles you down, its attrition in the battle is random encounters. Dungeons are designed with obstacles, and I put that in big quotes because the obstacles are just dead ends that have nothing in them. They don't have to tempt you over there because you just don't know what's over there. You just walk into a corner and the game's like, oops, this is where the floor ends. And then you have to go back and probably have to fight 37 cockatrices in the meantime. And I don't know, it was weird. I find now with the access to the internet and the ability to like look up a map of a dungeon if you're just sick of that shit, it obviously makes much less of a difference. But man, I like my first playthrough, I would just walk into a corner and be like, well, okay, thanks.
Reload the save
use a bunch of potions. Yeah, make a save state, unload it before I make any decision. I don't know. I thought I didn't find it like super annoying, but it was, it's a very economical use of resource if you're just trying to like add a challenge to a dungeon.
Yeah. No, yeah, they're surprisingly engaging for what they are, given like how old the game is. Certain ones are better than others. Yeah, like you called out the ice cave and the whatever fire temple, lava volcano, whatever fire crystal cave, whatever. Yeah, and like I like in the ice cavern, whatever that one's called, that like you have to do the little puzzle where you go to the room above and fall through the floor so you can get the Levis stone. That's really cool. Like we actually have a puzzle.
Yeah.
But then there are some of them that are just kind of like a maze of rooms, and don't have as much going on. So, but like, yeah, I think they do surprisingly well, given that this is was an NES game.
Yeah.
Like much better than I would have expected.
Yeah. The original Final Fantasy came out like 10 years before Pokemon did. And Pokemon is the game that introduced me to the idea of like RPGs where the overworld had explicit like movement puzzles in it. And introduced, I imagine, a lot of people who are my age and similar to that concept. So it was like the ice cavern, I think, stands out. It's such a short dungeon too. It takes like 10 minutes or something to get through it, but it's cool this time. Not ironically, because it is cold in there. That it has like that like little navigational puzzle to it as well. I thought it was neat. That's a good call out, I think.
The one other thing I wanted to talk about was just the end of the story. Once again, you can see their lust for storytelling, even in this very first game, because like it actually has an interesting conclusion. And I feel like it's really like unexpected and surprising when you get to it, where in the beginning of the game, when you fight Garland, he gets like cast back in time and then becomes like this chaos demon that you end up having to fight at the end. So like, there's like a time loop thing going on. And it was just funny. Like I thought upon playing it this time that it's like the same exact thing as Skyrim, but in reverse, where in Skyrim, like there's the ancient legends where they fought Alduin at the top of the mountain and then they defeated him by banishing him or whatever. But what they actually did was just send him to the future. Yeah. So yeah, it's just like the same exact idea, but the opposite way around. So I just thought that was interesting.
No, I agree. I like it. I like that the way that the game treats that story in the way that it sets up for the very most classic RPG setup of all time is go to these locations and collect these relics or whatever. And this game's version of it is go to the different dungeons and what do you do with the crystals? You purify the crystals? Yeah, you
purify the crystals. Because they're supposed to be have light in them, but they've gone out. So that they're...
Right.
Yeah, so you have to purify their squee.
You got to purify the squee. So you have to purify the crystals at the 4 different dungeons or whatever, and then the dungeons have bosses. But the dungeons are these specific elemental fiends that you fight. That represent like the different elements and are all different kinds of enemies. Like one is a dragon, one is a lich. His name is Lich. Very easy to remember that one. Who's like an undead guy. And I found this to be
whatever.
There's Kraken, and then I don't remember what the fire one is supposed to be.
Is he like a devil or something?
Yeah, that probably is just
like a demon of some kind.
A demon long dead with nothing left to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you have these 4 bosses that are like the big bosses that you have to finish to beat the game. But then when you go back in time, you have to fight them again because they aren't dead in the past. And like they're responsible for sending chaos forward in time as Garland or whatever. And I think it's cool how that ties together and how they get to reuse the bosses in a way where it's like you fight them the first time without the context of what they are, and then you fight them again the second time with that context and makes them a little bit more menacing in that way.
And another one of those things is like a clever reuse of resources, right? It was a way to reuse the bosses you already made, but like give like some kind of justification for it that in a way that really works.
Yes. Which is the thing that we talk about fairly often. It's interesting the way that things change, but they stay the same. Like in 1987, you would want to reuse resources because you have limited space to store new assets on cartridges, and it's difficult to implement new content because you have to the tools you're working with are not nearly as in depth. And then we come to today, and now you want to reuse assets because games are incredibly larger than they ever were.
Yeah, because now they cost $1 billion to make.
Yeah, and then those assets now cost even more to make because you have more people working on them, and they're more in depth in how much it goes. So it's funny to see that sort of mirrored from the past to now. Mm-hmm. So I agree, and I like that. And just generally speaking, I think that the end of this game, I did describe it earlier as a classic JRPG difficulty spike, but like I think the last dungeon in this game is pretty fun. I wish that the doors were more distinguishable from the walls, but that feels like not that important of a complaint to have.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I liked it as well. I liked the integration of the story. I did not, in either playthrough, remember how important the princess Sarah was supposed to be to the story. And then like got to the last dungeon, it was like you play the lute and it lets you into the thing. And I was like, right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, she gave me that like 10 hours ago, 12 hours ago, however long it's been.
Yeah. I want to say that this playthrough, my clock, the in-game clock said that it was 16 hours, but this is the playthrough that I use to fast forward all the time. So I probably only played it for like 10 hours. I don't know. Still long enough for me to forget that I was given a loot at the beginning of the game.
Well, I think you're supposed to forget.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention, it's just like an offhand thing, is like I just think there's a lot of memorable stuff, like a lot of little memorable set pieces and characters. Like I think like right after you leave the first town of like, was it like Cordelia or something like that, Corellina or
I think it's I was saying Corellia, which is the first planet from Star Fox, Star Wars, but I think it actually might be the same. Or Cornelia is Star Fox.
And Corellia is from Star Wars.
Corellia is Star Wars, yeah.
Anyway.
This is very important information.
Yes, this is very important that we figure this out. Now, pull up Wikipedia. Now, but after you leave that first town, like you can go north and find the cave with the wizard in it, who's like got the like Fantasia brooms, and he's missing a crystal eye, and you're like, oh shit. Mm-hmm. This is cool. And like you remember that, you know, as soon as you get that eye, you know exactly where to take it. And there's also the dwarves who like blow up the piece of land that lets you go out into the wider ocean, and you come back there later to get the Excalibur forged for you, and like it's like a waterfall cavern with like a golem in it, which then there's more golems in the Mirage Tower, and like I don't know, there's just like a lot of cool little like memorable like characters, like NPCs, or like little interactions and set pieces, like for a game as old as this. So yeah, it really has that like D&D, I think, DNA in it. That just feels so much more palpable with older RPGs. Like you can just feel like it feels like a scenario like somebody would come up with for D&D. And yeah, you just don't quite get that flavor as much with more modern games.
Yeah, I think it's a thing that you can tie into, I guess, like the increase in technology. It's why I liked. I don't know. I've had this on the mind recently for obvious reasons. I think it's why I like games like Iron Lung a lot. Because it's a game that leaves so much to the player's interpretation. And I don't just mean like in a narrative way. I like that it gestures at an idea, and you have to sort of think in your own head what that means in the context of the game. And the old RPGs and old games generally are exceptionally good at that, because like, yeah, you describe the guy walking around without his eye and had the Fantasia brooms, the wizard. And like when you talk to him, he's like bumping into shit. Like he's a total cartoon character. And so you have an idea in your head of this like cartoon ass wizard that isn't what's represented by pixels on the screen. And I think that aids a lot in that sort of memorable nature to a lot of the things that you encounter in this. I love, I forget what its name is. The dragon that upgrades your class.
Oh, Bahamut.
Yeah, Bahamut. Yeah, because it's Bahamut and Tiamat, obviously. The two dragons.
I completely forgot that that's how that happened. For some reason, like I had remembered you getting your classes upgraded at the Mirage Tower. I just like completely had misremembered that. So like I went all the way through it and warped up to the temple, and I'm like, oh wait, I guess maybe that wasn't here. So I had to turn around and then go. I was like, oh, it's just this random hole in the ground on this random island.
That is like one of the most important character upgrades in the entire game.
Oh,
yeah,
it's very important for the late game. Yeah, like you need that. You need those upgrades from the random hole in the ground.
From that random hole in the ground. But like that's pretty fucking memorable. I wouldn't have guessed it the first time through, but the second time I was like, I know exactly where I need to go for this. But yeah, and like that's the fact that there's this like big dragon entity that grants you a incredible power, and you like talk to them, and it's not a boss fight in any way, is a cool and interesting thing that you wouldn't have thought of. It's just all very well sort of. Maybe not well thought out, but it's all very evocative in a way that makes the world feel very varied. I think it's why when you look at modern Final Fantasy games, it's this combination of they've used the modern technology to make like photorealistic people, and they all have very dark backstories, but then also the games also include cartoon cactus people and like living plushes and stuff. And you're like, oh, right, because Final Fantasy has this like long history of being a big mishmash of all kinds of tone and aesthetic choices. And I think it literally starts like right here in the first one. Do we have Final Fantasy thoughts?
My final thoughts. Yeah, so I, as mentioned up top, got this game in 2004 and played it a bunch. It actually, I was a late adopter to the GBA for some reason. I don't know why. But when Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories came out, they had like one of those big cardboard promotional stands at the like GameStop or EB Games or Babbage's or whatever it was back then. And I remember, then asking for it once I saw that, and then my parents getting me a Game Boy Advance SP with that game. They're like, you can pick one other game. And I just remember like looking at all the games on the shelves and, you know, seeing Final Fantasy. I'm like, okay, I'm obviously a Kingdom Hearts fan. I know I've heard of Final Fantasy, never played it. So I picked it up and I just looked at the back of the box, and there was concept art on the back of the box of like a desert, and I think it's supposed to be the desert caravan that you'd go to get the bottled fairy. Another memorable little scene. And it's like, you know, it's very concept art. It's like a big, wide kind of Dune-esque desert with like some people, like, you know, in like kind of Star Wars-y like desert robes, and they had these big snails that like they have with them. kind of like, like in place of camels, like they're like that's carrying their stuff from their caravan. I just remember that just being such like a cool piece of fantasy artwork that like that sold me on it. So like I picked this up and played through it many times. And it comes with the second game as well. It's Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls 1 and 2. And I played the second one for like a couple hours, got stuck on something because it's much more story driven and scenario driven, and couldn't look things up back then very easily. So I just kind of like gave up on that and just replayed the first one a million times. And I was perfectly happy with that. Yeah, because I think this game's really good. I think it's surprising how well it holds up, given how much of a granddaddy of like the genre it is. I mean, there was plenty of stuff that came before, but this is really what popularized things, at least in the West. I know like Dragon Quest, obviously, was the bigger boom in Japan before this. But yeah, like it establishes a lot of the tropes, like the whole four crystals, the airship, and a lot of the other like kinds of items and spells and things, like a lot of that's established here. I think, yeah, like the scope of the world makes it fun to explore. It feels like it's like just densely packed enough, and that it's never too hard to find where you're supposed to go, and like you feel like you find just enough cool little secrets. That yeah, it really feels like an adventure, which is what I think. Yeah, this game was really going for, and I think it nails it. Yeah, it can be a little too easy, but yeah, I think kind of as we were getting at, like it kind of feels earned though. You like know that you're making it too easy while you're doing it, so it can be kind of fun in that way to just kind of steamroll something when you feel like you've earned it. So yeah, I mean, it's just a fun time. I really enjoyed replaying through it. It looks great. The music's good. Like, it's a limited amount of music because it's an older game, but like all the music that's there is good. And the secret dungeons are cool. It's a nice little, some nice icing on the cake. And then just a random thought that I didn't bring up during the discussion because I felt like it would be like a tangent that wouldn't end up actually being that interesting. But I think, yeah, like after the Zelda team made Skyward Sword and a lot of people didn't like it, they were like, well, let's go back to our roots and for the next game. And then they made Breath of the Wild. Like, I feel like Final Fantasy is kind of in need of that themselves. Because Final Fantasy 16, or like the mainline Final Fantasy games, have not done that well. And they've really struggled to find an identity, and they feel like they're just kind of chasing Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 10, and don't really know what to do with the mainline series. And I feel like turn your attention back to this one and to Final Fantasy 3, which is a lot like this one, but a little bit more advanced. I feel like they would make a great template to kind of like go back to that more kind of old school fantasy, like open kind of more D&D exploration feel. So I feel like that could be a good idea for them to touch the roots. I don't think they ever will do that, but I think it would be really smart. And, we can dream.
We could dream.
So I'll quit rambling about this game. I really like it. A childhood classic. I had a good time replaying it.
Yeah. I want to just to start my final thoughts. It's what I started the podcast with as well. I really want to drive home like how good I think this game looks. This is it's perhaps the Game Boy Advance is a specific point of nostalgia for me. And when I say perhaps, I mean it absolutely is. It is one of the Nintendo DS is probably my favorite like console of all time, and I think that 75% of that is that it played Game Boy Advance games, and the Game Boy Advance is actually my favorite console of all time. But the DS just played that plus also DS games, which made it slightly better for me. And so going back and looking at something like this, it really hit a lot of the right neurons to get me excited about it. And I have the benefit of playing this with modern sort of emulation conveniences, like save states and like fast forward especially. And I think that aided in my enjoyment of this a lot. Not to mention like being able to play it on a nicer looking screen to enhance the visuals that I was already praising. So I think that's a great context. If you listen to what Andy said and thought, that sounds like a experience I would like to have, but I'm too old and I have a full-time job.
It's not that long. Another bonus.
That's true. The game's not that long. But yeah, I think if you have access to stuff to play this and sort of alleviate some of those, because if I were to sit down and give you a serious laundry list of my complaints with this game, it would just be like too many combats, takes too long to walk places, like very classic me complaints about stuff. And I was able to alleviate a huge amount of that when I played it. And it's such a good game to just sort of like casually go through a little bit at a time. Not too hard, as we were discussing. Possibly a little bit too easy, but depending on what kind of mood you're in, that might be fine. And it offers a surprising amount of like interesting player choice in a game that like you don't even get to choose what stats get upgraded, right? Like it's not that kind of an RPG, but you do still get to choose your spells and like what classes you start the game with. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on under the hood. Not to mention it just being like, maybe the single best way to learn about how like the origin of RPGs started, because all of the design decisions are so out on Front Street with it. So yeah, I also really like this game. I don't think I would like it as much in its original context, but I think that for the way that I played it, I had a good time. And even playing it without fast forwarding and like being a more normal player of the game, I think I enjoyed it my first time through, and a lot of it was because I let it be a thing that I just did a little bit every day for an extended period. I think it's almost like a cozy game before that was like a categorization of game. So yeah, I also enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to Describing the Skybox this week.
What will we be describing next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Resident Evil Requiem, a survival horror game. That is, I have so many thoughts about this. I don't even want to describe how I think about it right now. But it is the 9th mainline Resident Evil game. So I'm me, so I'm excited to play it.
Yep. I've intentionally not consumed any content about it.
Yeah, I had to actively stop consuming my typical content diet when the game came out because everyone that I watched started playing the game. Mm-hmm. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at describingtheskybox.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our email address, our Blue Sky account. You can find our Discord server where people suggest games for us to play and talk about the games after we have played them. You can get to our YouTube channel and listen to any of our old episodes, including ones that we did on Final Fantasy X, Persona 5, Chrono Trigger,
Earthbound,
other RPGs, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Listen to the 40-minute episode that we did on that one. Quake that like button for a 15% chance to kill it instantly. Equip the mithril gloves and smash that subscribe button.
Play the loot from Princess Sarah in the comment section. Send Garland back in time, hurtling towards that bell.
So you're notified when new episodes go live. So you're notified 2,000 years before new episodes go live. That's pretty good.
Yep.
Do you ever think that we... Do you ever think that we're so deep in inside jokes that we risk not being able to come up with unique thoughts anymore?
I mean, I think it comes in waves.
It
like,
does.
You have like phases of referencing things a lot, and then the new things come when you're least expecting.
That is true. You can always count on them to come eventually. Nice.